Hey y'all, Tracy here with Just Stick It Farms. It is February the 7th, I believe, and this is an excellent time to go through your garden and clean up your perennials. It's a good time just to cut back any of the dead off the perennials and just clean them up a little bit. And around Valentine's Day is a great way to remember it, but that is when you should come in and give your roses a good pruning. Now, you only want to prune repeat blooming roses. Now, you don't want to prune your roses that bloom only one time, spring show, and then they're done. You don't want to prune them right now because you'll be pruning off all of your spring blooms. But it is an excellent time to prune your repeat blooming roses. So if you come in and take off about half or about a third, they're going to do so much better this year. They're going to bush out more instead of being more upright. They're going to bush out more. And they're just going to do so much better. And this is a perfect time to come in and do it. They're starting to put on their new growth right now, but they're not just covered in foliage to where it makes it hard to see what you're doing or to prune. So you can come in, take out any dead, any diseased, take out branches that are crossing each other, crossing over each other, and like rubbing up against each other. Take those out and then just take it down about a half or about a third. And what you do is when you cut each branch, you take it down to the next bud, right above the next bud. And we're going to start fertilizing them about the middle of March. We're going to start giving all of our roses a good fertilization. And then we want to fertilize them every 6 weeks, every 4 to 6 weeks, from the middle of March to the middle of September. So all week this week, I've just been working on cleaning up perennials, and I really already started pruning some of my roses back. The ones that I'm not really pruning hard because they're small, but they just need cleanup, that's what I'm doing to my roses right now. And then that way, when February 14th rolls around, it won't be such a task because I do have a lot of roses. So if you've seen my video before, you saw how I've broke our farm down into zones, and I've been working on working those zones. So zone 2 is my cottage gardens. So that's all of the beds around the house, all of the cottage gardens. And that is the zone that I've been working on today. Our pine forest that Jean planted right after we moved in here has finally gotten big enough to where we can harvest our own pine straw. This is huge for me, huge, because I like to freshen up our cottage garden beds with fresh pine straw. I really like to do it spring, and I like to do it in the fall too. But definitely at least one time a year, I always put a good fresh layer of clean pine straw in my beds. Just makes everything look so pretty and so clean and tidy. It usually costs me about $250 to $300 for that pine straw to do all my beds. Well, it's free now, and that is huge to me. So Chase has been going over and raking up pine straw and bringing it over here for me. Working on cleaning up the beds, cleaning up the perennials, shaping everything up, and pulling weeds. And Chase has been bringing pine straw over here for me, and we're getting the beds freshened up. Everything just looks so much better with a nice clean layer of pine straw. This is my quietness rose, and I'm actually going to take off about a third of it. I'm going to bring her down. I'm going to take off about right here. See, that's about a third. I'm going to take it off and give it a nice round shape. There's a couple of branches in here that's crossing. I'm going to remove those, anything dead, and give this a good pruning and a good shape. These roses here, they're small and they didn't really need a lot of pruning, so I just did a good cleanup on them and they look so much better. If I didn't do a very good job on my pruning and cleaning up on the fall, this right here is what happens. You end up with all these little dead tips on the end of them. And I like to come in right before the spring show and clean them up and just take them back. So let me show you. So like this one, I like to just come in and take it back and prune it right there, right above the bloom, and clean all this up. Because what happens is when the show starts taking place and this rose bush is full of all these beautiful blooms, it's not so pretty when all these little dead stems are sticking up. So I like to come in and clean them up. This is a gardenia here, and my gardenias always do this. They get this yellowed. Well, this is where that frost burned it a bit, but it'll flush that off and put out some new growth, so I'm not too worried about that. But it gets this yellowed look, and that is an iron deficiency, so it needs some iron. And I use Dr. Iron, and I'm going to pick some of that up at Petals tomorrow and give this a good dose of that so that it will green up and it'll be beautiful. So you can see, like, I've been working and cleaning these up. So this just had like dead sticks sticking up. This is a salvia, Henry Lulberg, and it had dead sticks sticking up, and I've been pruning that back and cleaning that up. And then like my lamb's ear, they kind of look rough and ragged, so I'm just cleaning all this up. Now these lamb's ear leaves make excellent mulch, so I'm gonna leave them in the bed and just put clean pine straw on top of them. But they need a good cleaning up. I need to make them look better. These little roses, they don't need a hard pruning, but they need those little dead tips taken off. So I've been working on my cottage garden beds, and I'm hoping to have these completely cleaned up, ready for spring by next week. I'm not going to start fertilizing everything until the middle of March. The same time I start fertilizing my roses, I'm going to start fertilizing all my shrubs too. I've also been working on cleaning up my potager garden beds and getting them all ready to plant. During the fall, I did a lot of the prep work on the beds, but there's still quite a few things that need to be done to get them ready to plant. In about 4 weeks, we should be able to start planting. 4 to 5 weeks, I'll be ready to start planting a lot of things in these beds. Potager garden is not beautiful right now, but I want to take you through and just kind of give you a little pre-tour of the potager garden of what it looks like right now, this time of year, when there's actually a blank canvas to plant this spring and summer and fall. It's going to be just full and alive and lush and beautiful. And right now it's just a blank canvas, but in a very short time, this garden is going to be beautiful. My hopes for the garden season this year is to give you guys a garden tour. I would like to do it once a week because the garden changes so much in just a week. But I'm not going to promise once a week. I am going to promise at least every other week we're going to do a garden tour. So I thought it would be really fun to start the garden season off this year with what it looks like right now as we're getting ready to plant and as we have a blank canvas. And then all throughout the season, you guys can watch the garden grow with me. Okay, we'll start here at the gates. And I know those of you who've been with me for a while have heard this quite a few times, but there's going to be a fence that starts right here and runs down the length of this bed. And there's also going to be a fence on this side. And the fence is actually, it's going to start right here at this pole and run all the way down. So this part of the bed in front is actually a continuation of the cottage garden beds, but it's also the entrance border of the potager garden. So in these beds here and here, in these spaces is roses and herbs and different perennials, mostly roses and herbs. Okay, so as we enter the gates, this is bed number 1. And in bed 1 and in bed 2, I had a cover crop there all winter of winter rye on both of these beds. Chase and I worked on these beds last week, and we've got these weed tarps, which we got from Hoss Tools, and we've just got them covered over that winter rye just to kind of kill it out, because we practice no-till here in the potager garden, because I am all about building the soil out here. It has been my mission from the very beginning to build this soil to a really good, rich, healthy, alive soil. So I don't want to till it up. I don't want to risk any kind of compaction, and I don't want to I just want to keep my soil very healthy. So when we pull this weed tarp off, I'll just kind of work it in with a hoe a little bit and start creating my rows for these beds. So this is bed 1, and that's bed 2. You can see my bed borders here are the logs, and these were from, we had a tornado here a couple of years ago. The only real damage it did here was it knocked down a bunch of trees, and it damaged our barn. So we took those trees that fell and made bed borders in the garden. But you can see they're about done. They're pretty much rotten, which is awesome, because this I'm just adding it right back to the garden. Just like in nature in the forest, when the trees fall, debris falls in the forest and it creates this forest floor. If you pull back any kind of dead, decayed, rotten logs that's out in the forest, holding moisture, it's almost like a sponge. And it's just, when you peel back those layers of decayed bark, there's all kinds of life in there. There's worms, and there's all kinds of different microbial life living in that rotten log. And that's part of what hugelkultur is. Hugelkultur means mound garden, and it's a German method of gardening that they use. And what they do is they pile up logs, decayed, rotten logs. They pile them up, and then they just start adding compost and compost and compost on top of that. And those logs absorb moisture and release that moisture back into the soil. Plus, it invites all kinds of life to the soil. And that's how they primarily grow their potatoes, is on hugelkultur mounds. And they do it in mounds. They build up these mounds. I like to do hugelkultur and dig a deep hole, and then put the logs in there, and then put compost, compost, compost. And it just breaks down, and it creates this wonderful, rich, moist soil. So out here in my garden, I've got one bed that I would consider somewhat of a hugelkultur bed, and that is the one behind my garden shed that has my shade medicinal plants in. But really, I don't have any hugelkultur beds out here, but I did a project when I worked at Petals from the Past where we did a hugelkultur bed, and it was very cool, and it was awesome how well it worked. Okay, so this is bed 3, and I've already got this bed prepped. So you can see I've got my rows. Where you see the straw or the hay, that is my pathways to walk between rows. So you can see that's a row, that's a pathway, a row, a pathway, a row, a pathway, and a row. And then down here, I like to do different designs within my beds. I just think it makes the garden so pretty and so interesting. So I've got this bed prepped, and I love my little half moon circles here that I've started doing in my beds. I love these. It just makes the garden so pretty. This is bed 4, and I'm still working on it. I started it, but I haven't got to come out here and complete it. But this is a center of these 4 beds, and that's an olive tree that I think died. The Arctic blast, I had it covered and everything, and I think it got it. I'm not sure yet if it's gonna pull out of it, but the one that was in that bed is definitely gone. It's history. I've replaced these olive trees here in the center of the bed. This will be the 3rd time. I've been like really adamant about having olive trees in the center of the pathways of my potager garden because of the spiritual significance of the olive tree. And this garden is eventually one day going to be a paradise for me. It's going to be, I want it to be like a Garden of Eden with fruits and flowers and fig trees at the entrance. I did a little study of the Garden of Eden, and I really wanted olive trees in the center of my pathways of this potager garden. But this is the 3rd year to replace them. And I want a big, beautiful, cool-shaped tree here. And I think I'm giving up. I think I'm gonna come up with something else because they're also expensive. Now we can grow olives here. There's a certain variety called Arbequina that we can grow here. But once it gets below 17 degrees, it needs to be protected. And I've protected them. I have protected both of them, but probably not well enough. I think that cold air was getting up underneath my winter cloth, and I think it just gets them. So I'm grappling with the idea of just letting the olive tree go and doing something else in the center beds here because I want it. I don't want to have to keep battling it. I don't want to have to keep replacing it. And I want it to grow and get substantial and have a cool form and be a nice tree in the center of my potager garden here. So I think I'm gonna have to let my vision of the olive tree go. I don't know. Haven't quite decided yet. This is my little center bed here. And you can see I've made this shape with like a curve on that bed, a curve on that bed, a curve on this bed, and a curve on this bed. And then in each curve, I've made some curved rows, 4 of them right here on this bed. And I'm doing the same thing on that bed, and that bed. And then as you walk on into the garden here, that's my grapes. And it is time to prune your muscadines or your grapes right now. It's a good time to come in, give them a clean up and prune them. I've got to get on that and get that done. But as you're coming through, there's another bed here. And then I've done the same thing. There's a semicircle there, here, there, and right here. And I've done the same thing with my rows where the circle is. So it just creates a really nice pattern and it makes the garden so beautiful. It has design to it. So a garden for me is more than just function. It's more than just having rows of okra or rows of corn or rows of tomatoes. I want it to be a lovely, beautiful space. I want it to grow food, vegetables, herbs, medicine. I want it to grow all of those things to sustain my family, but I also want it to be a beautiful place. It's my refuge, it's my sanctuary, it's my place that I come, meditate, pray, and it's just my happy place. It's the place that I come when life is super stressful and, you know, or I'm bummed or whatever. It's the place that I come. I can pull some weeds, have a little talk with Jesus, and walk away feeling a little bit better about the whole situation. So the garden is way more to me than a place to grow my food and medicine for my family. It is my sanctuary. So I want it to be a beautiful, lovely space. When you walk out into my garden, I want all of your senses to come alive. taste. I want you to be able to walk through the garden and pull things and taste them and eat them. Smell. I want you to be able to brush up against the herbs or the plants, the roses, and have fragrance and smell. I want you to see loveliness, beautiful. I want you to be able to touch all the different textures and the plants and the flowers. I want you to see pollinators and bees and butterflies and hummingbirds and all kinds of life going on out here. The garden in July and August is pretty hard. It's pretty hard to garden in July and August in Alabama when it's 100 degrees and the humidity so high you're just dripping with sweat. It is hard to do that kind of labor in that kind of condition, but it makes it a little bit easier when it is a beautiful and lovely space that you're drawn to and that you want to be in. So, you know, I could take these beds and I could just do straight rows and it would be super simple and it would be easy, but it would not be as interesting and as beautiful and lovely as it is to have these different designs and patterns within each one of the beds. Okay, so I'm backing back up, and that's bed 3 and 4. And this is a rose. This is Rosa multiflora carnea. And you can see I've kind of let her just go wild. I didn't do a good trimming up in the fall, and she's just been going wild. Now, Rosa multiflora carnea is a spring blooming rose only, so I'm not going to come in here and do a hard pruning on her, but I am going to do some training. I'm going to get on my ladder and I'm going to do some weaving and some training of some of these branches because it's just kind of gotten a bit out of control. So this is bed 5 and this is bed 6, and so I've got my 3 little half moons here, and I've got my cattle panel trellises here, and this is where I rotate beans and tomatoes. This year, tomatoes are going here, and all along each side is my garlic. Garlic is a great companion with your tomatoes. Here's more garlic. So last fall, when it was time to plant my garlic, I knew in my plan that tomatoes were going here. So wherever my tomatoes are going the following year is where my garlic goes that fall, because they're just good companions together. And I love how this worked out too, because when you walk through here and you've got tomatoes on each side of you, or you've got beans on each side of you, it just makes a really cool little tunnel, and it's really pretty. I love it. Down here on the end, I had onions planted here. That Arctic blast got most of them. I've got a few there that have come up. This is bed 6, and I've got kind of got my design a little bit different here. I've got the half moons, circles. There's a cattle panel trellis there. Last year that was tomatoes. This year it's going to be beans. And then I kind of did my rows like this. I made this one a little bit different, just to give a little bit different design. Now this is chickpeas coming up. This was a cover crop that I planted last fall, and that freeze we had, early freeze we had, killed it all back, and it's been trying to pop back out now. So I've got it coming up everywhere, and I'm just gonna leave it until I'm ready to plant this bed. Okay, so this is, like I told you earlier, that's my grape arbor, and those are grapes that are Pierce disease resistant, because Pierce's disease is something that we battle here in grapes. So that there's 3 different varieties on that. There are 2 Daytonas, a Stover, and a Foxy Lottie. Now this is bed 7, and got my little half moons, and I've got these rows here. Then I've got that trellis kind of goes around. That's actually an old fence, so it's not real sturdy, it's not real durable, but it's been doing the trick. So this year, tomatoes goes on that. Then over here, pretty much kind of the same design as the other bed. I've got my circles. See, I've got to work on this and redefine my rows. And then I've got my straight rows here. And those are my blackberries that are trellised. Got a couple of videos on how to do that. I'll put them in the description below. And back here, I've got this arborvitae here. This is actually to create a wall. They're going to get about 8 feet tall. And this is to create a wall to help kind of hide the greenhouse a little bit. And then over here, I've got a couple of different things, and those are blackberries back there. But I've got some Jerusalem artichoke. I've got echinaceas in here. And I've got blanket flowers in here. These are going to be so pretty. And these are goji berries right here. Goji berries or wolfberries. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. Then I've got these rows here that need to be shaped up and defined a little bit. And then as we come on around, I've got some raised beds here with my strawberries. My asparagus that I planted in here, I don't know what happened to them, but they did not make it. I think there's going to be about 3 or 4 that actually made it, but the rest of them didn't survive for some reason. So I've got to replant my asparagus. And my strawberries here are sinking. Like they're sinking a little bit. So I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I may have to lift them up, but I don't want to fool with them right now because I'm going to wait till I get my strawberries. So I've got 4 beds here. Jean is going to build me a 5th bed down there because we have room for it. And right now that one is strawberries and it's going to be asparagus. And that one is strawberries and it's going to be asparagus. And then this one and that one, I'm going to do some carrots, lettuce, and maybe some radishes in one and beets in the other. And then this is the beginning of our fence around the potager garden. Last year I did tomatoes on the trellis on the fence wall. This year I'm going to be doing beans. And these were some of the onions that I had planted. I grew these from seed and was so proud of them. This whole bed was full of onions. And that Arctic blast, unexpected freeze came through and pretty much got them all. There's a few that's made it. Okay, let's go in the greenhouse and let me show you all the seed babies that we've been working on together. They're doing well. It's time to start some more. And this Thursday, which is my zone, my greenhouse zone, I'm not going to be here. So that means I'm going to be behind on my seed starting. But I'm hoping when I get back on the weekend that I'm going to be able to spend some time and get out here and sow some more seeds, because it's time to get my peppers and my tomatoes in. And actually, I really should have already had my pepper seeds on. But let me show you what's happening in here. All my seed babies. We got kohlrabi, Brussels, hollyhocks. I've got kales, lettuces. This is yarrow. Let's see, spinaches, lettuces that got overseeded. So I got to do some work on those. Lettuces. We got cauliflower, Brussels, broccoli. These are poppies. Remember that little experiment we did with the poppies? And I put this seed in the refrigerator and for the cold stratification, and then I sowed it in these trays, and I was gonna put it on the heat mat, but I ran out of room, so I just left it out here. Look how well they've done. These are the carrots that I did, and I'm going to plant these in one of those raised beds here real soon, and those are the beets. So we've got quite a few things happening out here. Over here, here's my echinacea. This is the echinacea, and this is the hyssop. And that's more lettuce. There's more herbs inside under the grow light. We got a pretty good start on our seeds so far. Let me show you these. Now these two didn't make it, but these are some things that I took cuttings off of and propagated. This is a dwarf boxwood, a little mini 18-inch tall boxwood. I took some cuttings. I bought one and I took some cuttings off of it because I want to make like a little tiny wall in a couple of places in the potager garden. So I really need quite a few of these little miniature dwarf boxwoods, and they're not cheap. They're like $12 to $15 a piece, and I need quite a few of them. I haven't really counted how many I need yet, but there's no way I can spend that much money on something like that. So I bought one and I took cuttings from it and I just stuck them in some perlite with some root tone on it, and they took off. Now they're super slow. I did this last year, maybe even, yeah, last year. So they're super slow. I really need to start some more, but I just, first of all, just wanted to see how easy it was going to be or how hard it was going to be. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 9. I probably need about triple that amount. Back here, these are my water catchment things that we're going to use as part of the watering and irrigation system from the garden. This is my compost bin that we've made, and back here are my pomegranates that I moved from the old orchard, and I've got 3 pomegranates right here. I've got wonderful, Russian, and white. White is actually my favorite one. So this whole border here that goes all the way down and connects to the very first bed up there, this is all my medicinal herb garden. It's a big mess. It didn't get cleaned up last fall, and I haven't made it over here yet. There's some things coming up. That's a ginkgo biloba that I just planted. This is yarrow. I've got marshmallow coming out. The roses that I have in this garden are, they make really good rose hips, and that's why I chose those for this garden. That was lemongrass. It's iffy if it'll come back out of that or not. I kind of am doubting it this year because we had such a cold frost that came through. This is the horehound. This is not from the Haas collection, but this is horehound that I have been growing out here in my garden, and it's just done great. It needs to be cleaned up. I've got little echinaceas and comfreys popping up everywhere. What I'm really hoping to do this year is to expand this herb garden. I want this whole herb garden just to be full of a lot of these wonderful medicinal herbs that we're growing together from the Haas collections. So I'm really looking forward to filling up this herb border here with some wonderful medicinal herbs. I'm really looking forward to growing all of these herbs, harvesting them, making medicines and making foods and making things out of them. It's really going to be a fun year in the garden together, I believe. Okay, y'all, it's getting dark on me out here, and there's so many other things I want to show you and talk to you about, but I think we'll say goodbye on this video. I think it's going to be really cool that you guys see the garden today as a blank slate, and I hope you will follow through with me this whole garden season and watch how the garden grows and see and experience the beauty and the bounty of the garden together. All right, you guys, I'm gonna go over here and help Jean and Chase for a little bit. You guys have a wonderful week. God bless you, and I'll see y'all in the next video.